Welcome back, and now on to this topic. The state of Missouri passed a law today that bans abortion after 8 weeks of pregnancy. It does not include exceptions for rape and incest. Republican Governor Mike Parson has indicated he'll sign it into law. This, of course, comes 2 days after Alabama's governor signed the strictest abortion law in our country. That bill bans all abortions except in cases where the mother's health is in immediate danger. Both states' bills would imprison doctors for performing abortions, but laws that violate the law of the land are unenforceable, which the Alabama governor straight up admits. Instead, they're designed to be test cases before the Supreme Court. And just like that, reproductive rights will become a ground war in this next presidential campaign. We happen to have two terrific journalists with us tonight to talk about it. Laura Barón-López, national political reporter for Politico. And we welcome to our broadcast Liz Goodwin, here with us in New York. She happens to be politics reporter for the Boston Globe. Liz, I'd like to begin with you. Do you agree with our perception this week that this as an issue has vaulted to the front of the line, also part and parcel of our health care discussion?
Yes, absolutely. And you could really see that in New Hampshire this week. Kamala Harris had an event to roll out a new proposal on assault weapons. That was her focus. That's what she wanted to talk about. And then Alabama just kind of ripped through the week, and every single candidate has had to scramble to respond. And in some cases, I think it's not the debate they would desire right now, but it's one that is, obviously energizing Democratic primary voters. It's very important to the party and in general.
Well, Laura, let's start on Liz's last point, and that is no one was looking for or expecting this to jump to the head of the line, but now it's firmly a political issue. As a matter of politics, we get that these are Supreme Court-bound test cases. As a matter of politics, though, pick your poll. This issue is either 60-40 underwater for their side. It's either 80-20. How are they going to run under the Republican banner on an issue like this if it permeates down through the tickets to statewide elections?
Right. So I think we could see a shift in the way Republicans are talking about these bills, because even though it hadn't broken through in the 2020 presidential election race until this week, it was something that House Republicans very much wanted to make a big deal in their campaigns heading into 2020. They were hoping that the abortion bill that we saw come out in New York, which expanded access for abortions into later into the pregnancy, they wanted to use that against Democrats. And now the passage of these laws in these southern states and in Missouri as well as Alabama has kind of turned that on its head. We saw House Minority Leader McCarthy say just a few days ago that he thought the Alabama bill went too far. But a lot of House Republicans that I tried to speak to about this didn't really have an answer about the Alabama bill. Some tried to say, oh, I need to be briefed on it. So it is going to be difficult for them as this progresses and as 2020 Democrats, the presidential candidates, try to latch on to this.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.